Syrian. I was baptized a Catholic. And I escaped Iran in 1989 due to religious harassment. Prior to 1979, we had religious freedom under the king of Iran, but everything changed after the Islamic Republic was established. I was smuggled out in 1989. It's quite interesting how the smuggling happens. First set of smugglers said to me that they would put me in under sheep skin next to real animals, drive me over the borders, several borders, to India. And then they would fly me to Germany, where my brother had been residing, to seek religious asylum. And then the second set of smugglers said that I would be, one of them would marry me officially, destroy my Christian paperwork, convert me to Islam officially, and then fly me to Germany to reunite with my brother. And my family said, would you divorce her because she's officially your wife? I was 15 years old, and he said, if I like her, I will not. So we said no to that option. Finally, the third smuggler created a fake seminar for my mother to attend, a computer seminar in Switzerland. And then they gave me a fake visa, a fake passport, flew to Switzerland, sought religious asylum. And there's a refugee, I have to tell you, going back to the refugee situation in Jordan. Being displaced in Iran, being a former refugee, I understand the process firsthand because I was one. There's a difference between a refugee and an asylum seeker. So, Father, you're right. These people are registered with the UNHCR as asylum seekers, but they don't have privileges that a lot of other refugees have to seek, to have aid. So they are officially documented in Jordan and in Lebanon and in Turkey. And majority of the refugees are living in Jordan. We have about, the last number that was given to me was 11,000. Then it's Turkey, and then it's Lebanon. So just to clarify some data, some information. Writing? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So let's go to the next. So you all know the difference between the red and white martyrdom. So the red, Father, I don't know if you want to talk about it.
The red martyrdom is, as I understand it, red martyrdom when someone is killed, and the white is the daily martyrdom.
Yes,
the
exactly.
daily sufferings of the people.
Exactly. And that's something that our community is going through in Iraq and other places in the Middle East. So next slide, please. Slide 1 and 2, if you don't mind, as I speak the next few words. So I dabble in prose. I will not dare and say I'm a poetess because I'm not, but I enjoy writing some prose, and this is how I will begin. In the journey of life, I hear the cries in the silence of the desert. I hear their prayers in the whisper of the wind gently flowing through my raven hair. Dr. Kaplan, dear Sharon and Danube Institute team, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, or early good afternoon. I'm a Mesopotamian, and I have come to something that I recently learned about Hungary to be a Magyar Mesopotamian, the Hungarian Mesopotamia. I begin with a heart filled with gratitude for being given the opportunity to deliver this speech today, these remarks. Opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. The great Elie Wiesel, the Holocaust survivor and the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, tells us. What Hungarian government and the benevolent people of Hungary did not do was to be indifferent in the face of the suffering of their fellow Christians in Iraq. You did not remain as spectators to the suffering of men, women, and children of my nation. And for this, me and my community are eternally grateful. This is Father Salar, who is from Telescope. And Telescope is known as Hungary's daughter because of how you rose to the occasion and you assisted. Today, I will take you on a journey through time. We will travel together from era to era. We will soar to a distant past and we'll revisit the pages of our recent history. We may cry together. We will feel the pain of the innocent together. But I'm certain of one thing, that today we will bear witness together. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So let's start on this journey. Let us travel to Erbil and Kawa, Iraq, in 2016. I see in my mind's eye this child who was thrown against the wall simply because she was restless by ISIS. I met her at Al-Amal camp. Since that day, she has not been normal. Next slide. Telescope, Hungary's daughter, Nineveh Plain, Iraq, 2016. I relive walking through the demolished churches, homes, and businesses, only 1 kilometer away from where ISIS had its stronghold. Next slide. Amman, Jordan, 2015. The pain of this elderly refugee man who tearfully shared his fears of dying away from his children, dying away from his land, will always live in my memory. Next slide. Baghdad, also known as Karakosh, Nineveh Plain, Iraq, 2014. I feel in my soul the intense anxiety of this mother who frantically tried to free her daughter Christina from the grip of ISIS. They brutally separated Christina from her family and took her away. She was brought back later after ISIS was pushed out of Mosul. Thanks be to God. Next slide. Baghdad, Iraq, 2004. In my heart, I feel the pain of this father who was given the news that his 2 daughters were shot to death by Al-Qaeda as they were returning home from working on the American base simply to attend a wedding. He died literally 40 days later of a heartbreak. Next slide. Urmia, Iran, 1914. I see in my mind's eye the flowing tears of my late grandfather who painfully reminisced walking from Urmia, Iran, to Russia, escaping the genocide perpetrated by the Turks and the Kurds. He was only 14 at the time, but in his old age, he still wept as he remembered leaving his aged grandmother behind, never knowing what became of her. Next slide. Tehran, Iran, 1986. I was told, it was a cold November morning when I covered my ears as they shouted at me at school, Sayyid, you must say the Shahada, Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah. Their shouts were met with my defiance. I never wanted to convert to Islam, and I did not. Over the past century, my people, the Assyrians, the Chaldeans, and Syriacs, were savagely forced out of our ancestral lands. We lost everything. Our family members, our homes, our livelihood. The destruction which befell the Iraqi Christians, especially in the last 19 years, we must stop talking about this, that it started in 2014. This began in 2003. The devastation that befell our families, our people, 19 years ago has torn us apart and has spread us across the globe. In less than 20 years, our number was reduced from 1.5 million to less than 100,000. Next 3 slides, please. That's St. George Church. This is 2014. People slept on church pews for weeks. Next slide, please. So many of us find ourselves in the West. As an example, the largest Assyrian Chaldean diaspora is in America, about 400,000 to 500,000 strong. This is Yehuda Halevi. The great Yehuda Halevi, the Jewish philosopher and poet, said, Libi v'mezrach v'anochi v'asof ma'arov, which in Hebrew means, my heart is in the east, and I'm at the edge of the west. I too echo this sentiment today. I too live far away from my ancestral land, Assyria, Iraq. I am in exile. Next slide, please. The history of the Assyrian people is over 6,700 years. We were once great contributors to the world, establishing the first library in Nineveh, presenting the world's sophisticated irrigation system and farming systems, and having Arba Elu, today's Erbil, the center of religious freedom and multi-ethnicity. People of Nineveh turned to the Hebrew God through Jonah, fasting to repent, a tradition which still is observed by my people until today across the globe. According to the church historian Eusebius and non-Egeria, next slide, King Abgar V accepted the message of Jesus before the crucifixion, holding on to the promise that his nation would turn to Christ's way through Jesus' disciples, a promise which came to pass during 1st century AD through St. Thomas. And this is called Mandelian. If you're interested, I can describe to you later what that means. but this piece of cloth still exists today in Italy. Next 4 slides, slowly, please. Do you recall seeing the images of the evildoers in 2014 savagely bulldozing over the ancient walls of Nineveh, which had withstood the sand of time? Next slide, please. This is ancient Nineveh that stood still until 2014. In matter of days, my heritage, our world's heritage, was demolished and left in ruins. When I walked upon the broken bricks of ancient Nineveh gates and ancient scattered stones in Mosul, my entire being was in agony. When I touched the ancient Assyrian tree of life in the city of Nimrud, I think it's probably the next slide, now broken and laid into pieces, I felt as though my Assyrian nation was laying into pieces. This is not just a loss for the Assyrian people. This is a loss for the entire civilization. Today, the Assyrian people live in peril, physical peril in the east and cultural peril in the west. Why do I say cultural peril in the west? Because we are not just mere Christians. We are Assyrians who speak modern-day Assyrian, Neo-Aramaic, and we're being assimilated very quickly in the west, killed in the east, and culturally dying in the west. Our struggle is to save our heritage from extinction. In fact, I liken the beautiful Assyria, once a cradle of civilization innovation, to a beautiful crystal bowl, which has been dropped and shattered into pieces. My hope is that each piece still contains the essence of that beautiful crystal and will not forget its essence and would become a vessel of light, God's light, ancient Mesopotamia's light to the world. As we strive to save the light of Assyria and Iraqi Christians from extinction entirely, we look about us. I look at you, every single of you today, and you understand our pain. Today, I see a friendship, a brotherhood, a sisterhood in every one of you. In the Hebrew Bible, in Genesis 4:9, we read, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Where is your brother Abel?' 'I don't know,' he replied. 'Am I my brother's keeper?'" I believe this was the moment that defined the exile of the soul. And God continued, "What have you done? Your brother's bloods cry out from the ground." What does God mean when he says bloods in ancient Hebrew Bible? In plural. It means that Cain slayed the entire generations that would come from his brother Abel. How many Nigerian Christians, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Yazidis, innocent Afghans, Muslim Uyghurs in China, and Jews have perished for the sake of their faith and ethnicity? How many generations would have been born to be great orators, composers, artists? As brothers and sisters, we have a bond together, a bond which transcends any physical border and any time limitation. And today, I believe we collectively, regardless of our religion and our creed, are called by God to be our brother's keepers. The great Jewish sage Hillel wrote, "If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm not for others, what am I? And if not now, when?" I'm a humanitarian, this is a true statement, but more than that, I'm an Assyrian, a follower of Jesus of Nazareth. My nationality and my faith are both sacred and inseparable. Given my utter devotion to this particular cause does not stop me from advocating for others. In fact, this urgently calls my name and summons me. Tahar Jahoud, the Algerian Muslim poet and journalist who was killed by the Islamic terrorists for his belief in human dignity and human rights, said, "Silence is death." Yes, thank you. Silence is death, and if you talk, you die. And if you remain silent, you die. So speak out and die. Let us speak out against injustice towards anyone, whether they're Christian, Muslim, or Jew today. I began my speech by telling you that I hear their cries and supplications every day. It has left an imprint on my soul. A question rises. When we forget, do we kill victims twice? The answer is yes, we do indeed. We must not forget. We must become storytellers. We must tell the stories which have been passed on to us by witnesses. Next slide, please. Listening to a witness makes you a witness. This is what Elie Wiesel believed and lived by. So to you, who is a witness? What does that even mean? Someone who listens with such depth, one who is present in the moment, is open and is empathetic. The witness is implicated in the events, and we hope that you each are implicated today and what you heard about yesterday, and recognizes the responsibility for others. A witness cultivates an open heart. A witness carries the true stories. I want you to carry the stories that you hear here to your communities, churches, to your government officials. And I hope that you have been changed by what you've heard here. When you listen to a witness, Elie Wiesel said, your bones whisper. Your bones whisper along with the ones who speak. The witness is opposite of a spectator. We're told in the madness of despair, there lives the sanity of hope. And knowledge bears responsibility. When we hear their stories, we must find ways to create hope. If it's creating jobs, if it's advocating with your political groups for security, for stability, for all of Iraq, not just for the Christians. This is what we need. We urgently are in need to seek ways to bring hope. The Eastern Christians, the Assyrian Church, the Chaldean Church, and the Syriac Church, among others, have an unbreakable bond with their Western brothers, for which on several occasions, actually, we have paid a heavy price for this connection. Here in Hungary, your people have, as I stated before, proven their fidelity to their Christian brothers and sisters. In turn, you lifted up in prayer by countless. In fact, Ibn al-Ghayyam, a medieval Islamic theologian, once wrote, perhaps you may be sleeping while the doors of heaven are knocking with tens of supplications for you, by a poor person you aided, or a sad person you made happy, or a distressed person you brought relief to. Therefore, do not underestimate doing good at all. The Assyrian people have a kinship with our Jewish brethren. A Semitic nation which still speaks Aramaic fully understands the challenges of anti-Semitism. In fact, in Iran and Iraq, Jews call us Nashdidan. We call them Nashididan, both in Aramaic. Translation, our own people. The Assyrian people have a special relationship with our Arab brethren, having been their neighbors, their fellow doctor, their fellow farmer, their friend for millennia. There was a Shiite sheikh that came to Chicago and told me, please encourage the Christians not to leave Iraq because, after all, Iraq is a flower and Christianity is the scent of the flower. In closing, I must remind all of us, Father Abraham, when called by God, by his son Isaac, by the angel, answered, here I am, Hineni in Hebrew, Anaha in Aramaic. I believe, if you permit me to say this, you also have heard the cries of many in the silence of the desert. Like me, you also heard their prayers in the whisper of the wind. You heard them and you accepted the summit. And today, let us pledge to unite regardless of our religion and creed, regardless of the lands we reside in, and we may all cry out, Hineni, here I am my brother's keeper. Thank you.